thank you, of course, for inviting our President Craig Allen to not only contribute, but to speak here today. And so I don't want to duplicate too many of his remarks because I think he talked about the status of U.S.-China relations, the commercial relationship, and MNCs in China, specifically American MNCs in China, and the importance of all that. So he did a great job. I would underscore a little bit about what Craig did mention, I think is important to cover, is that most facets of the U.S.-China relationship are fairly strained today, especially on the political side of the relationship. And frankly, the state of bilateral relations has not changed significantly, spanning across now 2 U.S. administrations and changes to control of U.S. Congress since really the trade war began 4 or 5 years ago. U.S. policy towards China frames the relationship as fiercely competitive. Most of the previous administration's policies towards China remain in place, and some strategic efforts are underway. Frankly, many are underway to multilateralize a lot of that into various policy forums and frameworks, signaling a long-term systemic competition between the U.S. and China. I will say this administration has been clear that they want to manage that competition responsibly. I think that's an important signal. And similarly, China's policies toward the U.S. have not shifted significantly over the past few years. China's positions also reflect an effort to manage competition responsibly with the U.S. by not initiating overt or provocative retaliation for many actions so far. So while we know many longstanding policy challenges still remain, and there are efforts to pursue self-reliance in certain areas while promoting domestic companies or little giants, it's created somewhat of a chicken and egg dilemma between the U.S. and China, where one side accuses the other of being protectionist, the other side blaming the policies of the other, and thus inducing them to respond. Regardless of our starting point, the fact remains that today is frankly probably the most legally complex period for American multinationals operating in China in recent memory. For the U.S.-China Business Council, simply put, our message or our purpose is to create a level playing field for foreign companies, American companies, in China, promoting a healthy, stable U.S.-China commercial relationship. And as Craig noted in his remarks, trade and investment in China is good for both the U.S. economy, U.S. workers, and U.S. households. There's ample amount of data to support that. A healthy commercial relationship means more globally competitive companies. Companies innovate not only outside of China at headquarters in the U.S., but also, of course, inside China. So bringing that innovation from the U.S. to China and China to the world is good for all of us. China is a top 5 export market for 45 out of 50 states in America. That means we're selling more than just soybeans and aircraft and microchips to China. In fact, China's a top 3 export destination for many U.S. states, behind only our NAFTA trading partners, Mexico and Canada. The trade and investment is mutually beneficial, of course. This means a report from Hurin recently found that the top 100 foreign companies in China contribute at least 6% of China's total GDP, just 100 companies. This means greater access to innovative products and technologies in China. This means greater employment, tax contribution, and supply chain and value chain upgrading. And this means repatriation of profits to shareholders in the US and elsewhere. So what we have is a robust and intertwined ecosystem of capital, technology, goods, and services that are underpinning our relationship despite talks of decoupling intentions. As I look ahead in what is sure to be a political year in both the US and China, I see many challenges. I also see opportunities. First, I think there are very busy political agendas for both countries this year, which hopefully can mean that both are more focused on domestic issues, which will create some breathing room and some needed stability for at least the rest of this year. I do see a challenging legislative agenda in the United States in Congress that has a chance to complicate things further on labor, supply chain, and investment and capital controls. I also see a mix of longstanding policy concerns here in China related to market access, domestic preference, some of the other areas that Craig mentioned. But perhaps most importantly, and this has been underscored by several speakers so far, I see an increasing and growing gap on views of China between US-based headquarters and China-based operations for our members. The gap has always existed. We have to recognize that gap has always been there, but it has no doubt been exacerbated by COVID travel restrictions. The challenge of all this is that the impacts will not necessarily be felt today. There are certain impacts felt today, but over the long-term horizon, when it comes to strategic business decisions, I do see impediments to a bettering of relations. Despite the challenges and the news flow that we constantly see talking about the challenges in the relationship, it's easy to lose sight of the opportunities. So I'll just talk very, very briefly. USCBC continues to push forward an agenda focused on finding areas for our business communities to work together and achieve breakthroughs in cooperation. We've established cooperative relationships and forums to support the public health system by focusing on cooperation related to commercial health insurance in China. We're focusing on sustainability and decarbonization initiatives that promote positive policy recommendations to the Chinese government that support 2030, 2060 goals. And of course, ongoing business community engagement with the Chinese government and policymakers to talk about areas of shared opportunity and concern. The American business community has made its voice and views very clear on the importance of US-China relations and their commitment to both markets. We will continue supporting commercial relations and are happy to have partners like CCG and all of the companies that are in the room today supporting us and working towards this shared goal together. Thank you very much.